Welcome back to another Millennial Minute. Today's hot potato, should we cancel Columbus Day? You've already heard from our guest, friend of BoldTV, Ajay Bruno. He's a political strategist, and Jacob Rich, an associate contributor to Young Voices. Thank you both for being here. So, this is a thorny issue, but let's just settle on the fact that a lot of the facts around Columbus are not really facts. Right, AJ?
Right. There's a lot of mythology that surrounds it, and most of the people who are complaining about this issue probably have never read about him or know really much about him at all. They subscribe all sorts of, travesties and atrocities that were committed by other people later on. He wasn't going out there and massacring natives and whatnot. A lot of people that died from his early expeditions did so from disease, something which they had no concept of spreading back then. So Columbus himself gets a bad rap by a lot of these people who are promoting, cancel culture. And so I think we should stick to the facts. And if we do, there's no reason why Columbus Day should not be celebrated for a myriad of reasons.
Yeah, so Jacob, according to what I've read, he actually went back to Spain in chains one time because he actually did massacre natives. What's your read on all that?
Well, that incident actually didn't have too much to do with Columbus. It was actually his brothers who took over Hispaniola after him. And when he came back after going around other parts of South America, he basically came back to a village that had been torn apart because of his brother's inability to manage the area. I don't try to paint Columbus as an absolute tyrant and terrible person. I just think it's kind of odd that he's just venerated to such a high status. And to be completely blunt, he really was responsible for much of the slavery that happened in North America afterwards. Even though he did set out to be a slave trader, I mean, a lot of the properties that he established for Spain and a lot of the connections that he set up. I mean, Spain at the time was one of the leading traders of slavery throughout the entire world, and him not being granted by England or Portugal to go mean that he needed to kind of subjugate himself to the tyrant tyranny of Spain. And once Spain took over that area, they just put slavery all throughout. And one of the gestures that Columbus did was actually send 500 slaves to Queen Isabel. She actually thought it was quite appalling. She sent them right back. But I mean, he does have a history of enslaving Indians. He was kind to some Indians. He was enslaving some other Indians. He murdered others. He's a complicated individual, but I just don't think that he really sets the bar for what a federal holiday should be based off of. Federal holidays should bring people together.
So AJ, let's talk about this, right? A lot of the reason why Columbus has been venerated is, and I'm half Italian American, is because Washington Irving, right, an author of his time, of course, author of Sleepy Hollow, promoted Columbus as a way to, promote Italian American culture. But in fact, we're not even sure if Columbus was Italian, right? So there's even doubts about his origin, right? And of course, we all want to celebrate Italian American contributions to the United States. But on the other hand, St. Patrick's Day isn't a day off either. So can we meet somewhere in the middle where maybe Columbus Day is a day that we celebrate, being Italian, but maybe not recognize it at a federal level because of all the uncertainty around the legacy of this man?
Well, it depends, too, what we mean by definition of Italian. I mean, back then he was from Genoa, so I think he spoke a dialect of Ligurian, so, kind of a proto-Italian sort of thing. But I consider that Italian. But I don't see why we have to undo a federal holiday. I mean, this is a day which has grown in importance. Sometimes it's a day off, which is nice, sometimes not. But look, this is commemorating a time and a person who really ushered in the expansion of Western civilization into the New World, with all the good and bad that comes with that. So yes, he was not the first European here, but the Viking expeditions ended up failing because those settlements did not, take root. What he ushered in brought about settlement, and one of the main things he was caring about, more than glory and power and wealth, was he wanted to see Christian civilization flourish westward, which clearly happened. Again, there was some negatives that went along with that, but that goal came to fruition. I mean, there's a whole country named after the man. This is a really pivotal person in our history. If it wasn't for Columbus daring to sail west and discovering the Americas, even though he was trying to find that route to Asia, who knows what would have happened? The entire history of mankind might have been different. So I don't think we can undersell the importance of this guy. It wasn't like, Ponce de Leon finding the Fountain of Youth, supposedly looking for that. This is someone who's a pivotal person in Western history. I don't think we can understate that. And having a holiday is really appropriate when, in my mind at least, he's not just an Italian hero. This is someone on the same level as a Washington, as a king, as, you know, someone of that kind of heft and you know, power in history.
Okay, so we got to wrap this up. Jacob, should we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day instead? A lot of people do that. A lot of my friends do that.
One thing that was just said by AJ, yes, you know, Columbus was incredibly consequential, but the finding of America was inevitable. And even though he was courageous in doing so, the way you do things, the precedents you set are incredibly important. Because the United States did not get rid of slavery in its Constitution, the entire country had to go to war 100 years later. And the precedent that Christopher Columbus set up when he took over the Bahamas and other areas for the Spanish, it's just, I don't know. I think someone else in his position could have done a better job. And because of that, I have a hard time celebrating him.
Well, we're out of time here, folks. But thank you so much for being here for this important conversation.